Hey, what's up, everybody? In this video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to create this checkerboard. This checkerboard is going to be very, very complex if we were to actually build this in real life. I mean, just taking a look here, we can see that this checkerboard is composed or put together with inch and a half wood little wooden cubes, and they're going to be different material, and then there's a border on the outside, and then we can also see that each checker is also going to be a custom sort of checker with either text or a shape inside of it. And this, taking a look at it can be very, very complex. And if somebody was actually going to be creating this in real life, they'd be creating all these little individual cubes from those different types of wood and then gluing it all together and sanding it, and all that. And what we kind of known already, up to like a week ago, is that if we want to actually create this, we'd be creating these little individual cubes as components and then using lots and lots and lots of joints. The checkerboard itself is 8 by 8, so there's 64 cubes right there. So that's a lot of joints you'd have to use. But what we're going to do today is we're going to be working smarter and not harder. I'm going to show you how we can, create bodies, and then from those bodies we can use rectangular pattern, and then we can create components from those, and we can use rigid group. So something that's going to be taking us, would traditionally take us a lot of time. We're going to speed things up with the technology and features that we have with Fusion. So that is our whole point of the checkerboard. So let's go ahead and let's get started. And the first thing I would like to do is to come out here and create a new folder. I would just call this one checkerboard. So let's go ahead and create checkerboard. Okay, and then once that is created, I can now go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just save my design. I'm just going to call this one checkerboard. All right, so that is done. We're ready to get started. So let's go ahead, close down that data panel, and let's get going. All right, so as we get started here, we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're actually going to create a component, a new component, and I'm going to call this component the name of row. All right, because we're going to be creating a row of these hardwood cubes all put together. All right, and once that's done, I can go ahead and create a sketch. So I'm going to start on this plane right here. And I'm going to be creating a square, and it's going to be 1.5 by 1.5. Okay, so we have that one done. Let's go ahead and finish the sketch. And now I'm going to do an extrusion here. I'm going to send this back a distance of 1.5. Okay, so that is done. All right, and once again, that is a new body. So the operation is saying that that is a new body. I'm going to say okay. Okay, so once that's done, okay, what I'm going to do is come down here to that body. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go into physical material, and I'm going to put in a material on this one that's going to be a lighter color. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and choose like white oak and drop that on that. Okay, so that is done. All right, so as I was saying, this is going to be 8 by 8. Okay, and that means that our lighter wood, which in this case is oak, is going to alternate. Okay, every other block. Okay, to come up with my block of 8. So I'm going to use my rectangular pattern, make sure my object type is body, and I'm just going to simply select on that cube, and now I'm going to pick on select for my axis, and now I can go ahead and pick on that edge. I'm going to grab my arrow and pull this out, and now I can start worrying on my spacing. So my distribution here is going to be spacing, and I want there to be -3, okay, for my spacing. So it's going to be inch and a half, inch and a half. That's a total of 3. All right, so that's going to be able to alternate that. All right, I want a total of 4. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say okay on that. And now we can see that we have, okay, those 4 white oak cubes, okay, alternating. All right, now we're ready to get started, okay, for our darker cubes. So I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to pick on the top. All right, you might have to use some project geometry on this just to get the points that we want. So I'm going to go to project. Okay, and if I come in here, I can find this point. If I come in here, I can find this point, and I'm going to go ahead and say okay. Okay, now what I can do is use rectangle, start from that point and that point that I projected and pick on those to create the square. And I'm gonna go ahead and finish the sketch and look at this in an isometric view. This is when I can use extrude. I can pull this down. All right. The distance I'm gonna have to go is gonna be -1.5. Okay, it is not gonna be a join. It's now going to be a new body as well. Okay, and I can go ahead and say okay. So that's my body 5. I'm gonna right click on that, and I'm gonna say I want to add a physical material to it. Okay, once that comes up in my wood folder, I can come down and I can find a darker color. So mahogany, okay, that would be a good choice. That's a darker color. So I can go ahead and say okay and close on that. All right, so just like we did with the white oak cube, what we're going to do is use rectangular pattern, okay? Making sure my object type is sitting at bodies. I'm gonna go ahead and pick on that, okay? The axis I'm going to be using, okay? I can select on that, okay? And now I can go ahead and pull it in this direction. So obviously I'm gonna need 4 of those, and then once again, my spacing on that is going to be a distance of 3, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and say, okay. All right, so I can see that I have all 8, okay, of those cubes. Okay, we're all set and ready to go. All right. The only thing that I'm going to have to do is right now my row is not grounded, so I'm going to right click on my row and I'm going to come up and ground that. Okay, we can see nothing is moving. Okay, and I have all 8 of those bodies. Okay, so what I can do now is I can come out and I can just simply copy and paste another row in. All right, so I can right click on this and say copy. Okay, over here in the white space, I can right click. All right, and I can go ahead and do a paste. And what I forgot probably to do is to come up here to the overall top level to do this. So let's try that again. So let's right click, let's do a copy, and now let's go ahead and do a paste. There it comes through. All right, and now I can go ahead and just simply, push this up. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't keep all this exactly the way I want it to be. So that's going to be negative 1.5. Okay. And now I can use my dials. I can flip this over because we do want to alternate our rows. Okay. That's at 180. Okay. And now I can start pulling this across. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see. Is that negative 10.5? I think that's negative 10.5. I think I have that where it's supposed to go. All right. Now I can go ahead and say okay. All right, so we can see that those are all lined up. Okay, we're looking really good. All right, so the issue that we have right now is that this row is independent from this row. All right, we can grab a hold of this. Nothing's happening because it's grounded. All right, so what we have to do now is make sure that those two, okay, are put together. All right, so there's a couple ways we could do this. As-built joint would work. Okay, we could also use rigid group, but let's go ahead. Let's go with a joint on this one, and let's just say we want an as-built joint. Okay, that's going to be between this row and this row. See if we can get that to work. I'm not getting anything on that. Let's try that again. Let's just go ahead and do our as-built. I think we got it. Okay, nothing's moving. All right, so we have those 2 rows that are put together. Okay, now we need to obviously build the rest of the checkerboard. So this is the time where we can come out and use rectangular pattern. The object type that we're looking for is going to be components. Okay, the axis that we're wanting is going to be this. Did I get my objects? Here we go. This and this. Okay, and now I can go ahead and pull those. All right, here we go. So we got our 4. Okay, and then let's go ahead with our spacing. Once again, that's going to be a negative 3. Right, and so all those are going to go exactly where they need to be. All right. Now the only issue is that these rows are going to be acting independently. So I'm going to undo that, bring those all back together. And now what I can do is I can come out here and select all my rows, right click on those, and I'm going to come up and say I want to create a rigid group. Say yes on that and okay. All right, nothing's going to move. Okay, so we're all set. All right, so we have now the 8 by 8, all 64 of those blocks. Okay, correct material. Everything's exactly where it needs to be. So what we're going to do now is put a border on the outside of this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch. Me picking the top surface of one of these faces. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is just create a rectangle going from here to here. Once again, if things aren't popping up, go ahead and use that project geometry to get it through. And now I can use offset. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this border distance the same as our blocks, which is 1.5. I'm gonna enter that, finish up with the sketch, use extrude. Okay, find my profile, and I'm going to pull that down. Things are gonna be acting kind of goofy right now because remember your operation is still at join. So we're gonna say new component. Okay, and we're going to put that to the correct distance, which would be negative 1.5. Okay, so that is done. We're going to say, okay, obviously my border is able to move. All right, so what we can do is we can come in here and we can use an as-built joint between the border and we can just pick one of these rows. It's going to be a rigid joint type. We can say, okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. I'm going to call this one my wooden border. Okay, so we have that. Now what we can do is come up here and use an as-built joint. Okay, and I think, is that already on there? Yeah, I already did that. So that one's dead. That one's set. So let's go to wooden border. Let's right click. Let's go into our physical material. We're going to put a different color of wood just to get a little bit of contrast on this. Okay, cherry. I'm going to say it looks great. So I'm going to say a close. All right, so let's just do a little modifications to the border just to make this look a little bit nicer. Okay, so I'm going to come here to my wooden border, hit the radio button, activate that, and now I can come underneath modify and go into chamfer. All right, so let's just go ahead and chamfer this top edge, and we're going to chamfer that edge that goes all the way around. And I'm going to say that that is a chamfer edge of 0.125, and I'm going to say OK. All right, then the last thing I'm going to do is come in here, just to give this a little bit of a pop. Okay, make it look kind of nice. Is I'm going to come here to all these faces that make up those chamfers. Okay, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a gold sort of color to it, like a gold paint. So we can come underneath metal folder, we can find gold, and let's just take that gold polish and put it right there on that face. And then let's just go ahead and activate this at the top level. All right, so things are looking pretty sharp. All right, so that's the board itself. Okay, so that one's pretty much done. Okay, and now we got to start working on our checkers. All right, so here's how this is going to work. What I'm going to do is create a sketch. Okay, and I'm going to bring this right here to this particular dark face right here on this, and I'm going to create a circle. Okay, I can use my midpoints to track this into place. I'm going to start that circle. All right. And since we want our checkers to be able to sort of stack into each other, so like whenever, somebody were to, you know, require a king, all right, you can make a king by doubling those up. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with a diameter here of 1. I'm going to finish that up. Okay, and come out here and do an extrude. So I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to extrude this up a distance of, I don't know, we're going to call it 0.0625. The issue is right now it's going to want to create that on all those checkers because our operation is a join. Let's go ahead and create this as a new body and let's go ahead and say okay. All right, so that is done. Okay, so that's going to be the bottom portion of it. Remember, we want these to sort of stack in there with one another. So let's go ahead and create another sketch right on top of that. Okay, the overall size of this checker, we're going to call it 1.25. It's going to be a little bit smaller than the actual square itself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up with that sketch. I'm going to do an extrude. I'm going to include this and this to make up the profile. And I'm going to go ahead and just bring this up distance of like 0.0625. Okay, making sure this is a join this time because I do want to join up with the base on that. I'm going to say okay. And now we can go ahead and finish up and create the top part of our checker. So I'm going to create a sketch, pick on the face. Okay, I'm going to create a circle. All right, and this needs to be a distance of 1. Okay, I'm going to finish up the sketch once again, do an extrude. Okay, and I'm going to head and pull this up. And we're going to say this is 0.1875. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of a cavity there. Okay, and this is going to be a join operation, so we can say okay. All right, so we have our checker created. Now the thing is that if we came out here and take a look here, we do have a body. All right, so we're going to right click on that. We do want to apply a physical material to it. Okay, and this is when I could come out and go into my plastics. I could find my ABS plastic. I can come up here, I can do an edit, and I'm just going to call this red ABS plastic. Go into my advanced, go into my appearance, go into my color, and I'm going to just select red, and it's going to apply that red color, okay, to make up that checker. All right, so that one's done. Let's go ahead and close. Okay, so since I want you guys to actually be able to play a game with checkers in the end, right now we're not going to be coming out and putting any sort of joints on this. Instead, we're going to leave it right where it's at. But now I'm going to start creating the other checkers for the rest of this side for the red checkers. So I'm going to use my rectangular pattern. The object type I'm going to use is going to be bodies. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just pick on the body. The axis I'm wanting to use, I can grab one of these lines, and now I can go ahead and start bringing this over. All right, so we're going to be needing 4 of those, and then the spacing between them obviously is going to be 3. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in, and I'm going to go ahead and say okay. All right, so those checkers are exactly where they need to be. All right, let's see if we can't grab a hold of these bodies now. Okay, all 4 of them. I'm going to come up here to my move, and now I'm going to go ahead and just slide these in this direction. But before I do that, this is the one thing we always forget. You just saw me do it. Okay, when I go to grab those bodies and use the move feature, okay, before I do this, I'm going to pick on create a copy. I'm going to use my arrow and I'm going to drag this in this direction. So in my case, I'm going to send it in that direction, negative 1.5. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull it in this direction. It's going to be negative 1.5. Okay, so that's all done. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. Okay, and now I have okay, those 8 checkers that I'm gonna be needing for the red side of things. All right. So now I have these 8 bodies. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight all 8 of these bodies. Okay. I'm going to right click on that and say I want to create components from the bodies. Okay. So now I no longer have bodies to use. Instead, I'm going to see that I have these 8 new components down here. All right. Each of these checkers is going to be a little bit unique from each one. All right. So they're all going to have sort of some sort of characteristic about them. So for this first component, for this first checker, I'm going to call this one my circle checker. And for this next one, I'm going to go ahead and give it a name of. Let's see if I can get in here. This is going to be my square checker. And for this one, I'm going to call this one my rectangle checker. For this next one, I'm gonna give this another shape. I'm gonna call this my triangle checker. For this one here, this one is going to be my, let's just go with hexagon checker. And for this one here, we're going to call this one my ellipse checker. For this one, we're going to put in our first, well, we'll just call this one name checker. And then for this last component here, we're going to call this one our LTHS checker. Okay, so they all have independent sort of characteristics and names. All right, so I'm going to come here to my circle checker. I'm going to activate that one. Okay, and now this is when I can come in and create a sketch right there on that face. And I'm going to draw a circle here from the center. And I'm going to say that this is going to be a zero point 0.5 diameter. I'm going to finish up with a sketch on that. Okay, look at this in isometric view. And now I'm going to use extrude. I'm going to pick on this and pull this up, and I'm going to bring that up a 16th of an inch or 0.0625. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to come up here to the top level, pick on checkerboard, and now we can see, even though we started out with the same sort of body, all right, since we've now converted this into components, okay, I've added that circle, and we're not seeing that to the rest of them. All right, so now these are working as independent components. All right, now we can start modifying and just sort of changing those up. So we're going to continue on with this. Okay, I'm going to come over here and activate my square checker. Okay, I'm going to create a sketch, put it right here. And this is when I could come in to rectangle, go with my center point rectangle, start this from the dead center, and we're going to, once again, give those dimensions of a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. Okay, and now I can go ahead and use extrude, pick on this, pull it up. We need to make that 0.0625 or a 16th of an inch. Okay, and we're good to go there. I'm just gonna go right down the list here. Okay, onto rectangle. Okay, create a sketch, pick it right here. Okay, and now I'm gonna go ahead and use rectangle, center point rectangle, start this from the dead center. And I'm gonna say this is gonna be 0.5 by 0.75. Okay, just like so. Okay, finish up with the sketch, do an extrude. Okay, pick and pull this up. Okay, 0.0625. Okay, we got that one. Moving on to our next one, we're gonna go to triangle. Okay, so let's create a sketch, go right there to the base. I come up here, I can find my polygon. Okay, go to a dead center here and switch this to a 3-sider, making this triangle. Okay, and now I can go ahead and put that in place. And I'm gonna go ahead and just put a dimension on this one of 0.5. All right, puts that right in, finish the sketch. Okay, go up here to my isometric view. Let's do an extrude. Okay, pull this up, 0.0625 once again for my thickness. Okay, and that one is done. We're gonna go ahead and continue on. Let's go into rectangle or hexagon. All right, pick on this face, come up here to polygon, find our dead center. Okay, that's a hexagon. And now I'm gonna go ahead and say I want this from here to here. We'll make that 0.5. Finish with the sketch. Now let's do an extrusion. Okay, so we got the hexagon. Okay, moving down to my ellipse, create a sketch, pick on the face. And let's come in here and create an ellipse. Bring this over, bring this up, and let's go ahead and start adding some dimensions. So I want this to be 0.75, and I want this dimension here to be 0.5. Okay, finishing up with our sketch, we can go ahead and do our extrusion. Bring this up 0.0625. Okay, now we can go into name checker, create a sketch right here on top. All right, I'm going to go ahead now and go in and create my text. See if I can put a box somewhere close to the center. Okay, we'll get that sort of lined up. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and type in my first and my last name. Okay, the height on that, we'll go ahead and just leave it at point 0.2. We'll make sure it's a middle center justification. I don't know if we need bold exactly, but let's just go ahead and say okay on that. Finish up with our sketch, but this time let's go ahead and use our emboss feature. So I'm going to pick on that, select our face, which would be here. Okay, this is going to be an emboss, so we're going to say that depth is going to be 0.0625. Okay, we say okay, and now we can see that our name has been embossed onto the top of the checker. Okay, I'm done with that. So now we can come down to our LTHS checker. All right. So LTHS checker is going to require us to go on out to the internet. Okay. And we will find our LTHS logo. We can right click on this, save an image. Okay. And I'm just going to save this right here to my desktop. Make sure this is a JPEG or a bitmap. Okay. Those would be working great for us. So LTHS logo. Okay. And then this is when we can come out and go to like an online convert sort of website. And once we get there, we can come down, go to our image converter. Okay, we can say we want this to convert to an SVG. We'll choose the file. Okay, we'll come out here and go to our desktop. And let's go ahead and find our LTHS logo. There it is. Now let's go ahead and say open. And let's start the process. Okay, we can go ahead and download that. We can see the SVG has come through. Now jumping back over, going into Fusion. This is when we could come in and we can insert an SVG. So I can insert that from my computer. It's there in the downloads folder. There's my SVG. I can say open. Now I can go ahead and pick on that face. And this is when we can start sort of resizing things. This is when we can scale things and so on. But let's get this to an appropriate size. So you can see we're still a little bit big. Let's go ahead and scale that down. Okay, I think that's going to work great. We'll get this sort of dead center like so. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and say okay on that and finish the sketch. Okay, once we're done with that, we can go ahead and do an extrusion here, and we're just going to go ahead and pull up everything that makes up these profiles. And once again, pull those up 0.0625, about a 16th of an inch, and now we can say okay. All right, so once we're done with all that, we can come here to our top level. Okay, take a look at our checkerboard. We now have all the checkers that we need. They're all unique, individual. Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, so once your checkers are done, let's go ahead and create the other set that we're going to need. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. All of our checkers are done. All right. All we have to do is basically duplicate those checkers, and then we're just going to do an override on it. We're just going to change the appearance of the actual checkers themselves. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to come here. We're going to start with our first checker, which in my case is the circle one. Scroll down and get my last one. I'm going to select all those in one shot. And this is when we can come up here and go to move. Make sure you're picking on create the copy first. And now we can go ahead and we can shuffle these all the way down here to the end. All right, so we're taking that down like what, 9 inches. Okay, and now we can use our dial. We can rotate these 180 degrees, get those into position. Okay, we can now go ahead and shift these down once again, get those into the right position. And then we can shift them down just one more shot here and we can say, okay. All right, so the only issue that we have right now is that all of our checkers are the same color. Okay, that's not an issue. We can come down here now and go right here to the actual individual checkers themselves. Let's right click on this and let's go into appearance. And this is when we can pick out a color like blue. I'm going to pick blue. It seems like it's going to be a little bit better. Okay, it's going to pop out. All right, and so on. All right, so we can come here now and we could just go into blue and paint all of our checkers blue. So let's go ahead and get all those on. Okay, we got a nice color on those. Looks like it's changing them up. Let's go back here. Nope, nope, nope. Let's go back. Did the first one just perfect. Let's try this again. Let's go to our ellipse. Okay, let's go to appearance. Okay, and let's change that guy to blue. All right, it's going great now. All right, so that's what you're going to be doing is changing all those colors over, going into appearance, okay, and getting all these transferred over to a blue color. All right, you're going to continue that on with the rest of the group, and there you go. You're going to have a checkerboard that's ready to go. Each one of these is going to be independent, so you can actually play a game of checkers when this is all done. All right, and you can use joints in order to do that. So there you go. That's checkerboard game. That's by using the top-down approach. All right, you're also getting in using bodies and components. You're also going in and using rigid group, and we're trying to keep that workload to a minimum workload. Okay, when compared to joints and as builts and so on. So there you go. Have fun with that.